Yeah, that was a lot to follow. Yeah, I don't know how you talk after your lecturer speaks, but I shall try my best. Yeah, I'm really humbled to be in this room and to just be able to speak to you guys. Some of you were my pastors when I was a teenager. Hi, Pastor Ken at the back. So it's an honor to be able to sit here, to be able to sit here and like speak to you. I'm like, wow, I actually have something I can say that's relevant. So that's really amazing. Let me start by saying I've really, really enjoyed doing this class, and it's not just what we've learned, but the different people that we've learned with. Just having different perspectives from different countries. We had Burundi, we had Rwanda, we didn't finish, but we had Tanzania, we had Zimbabwe. It's been so amazing to just hear how ministry works in different contexts. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and I really thank Dr. Andrew and Dr. Kak for just making this possible. There's a clip I wanted to show. If you're on social media, you probably have seen it trending. And I think that's where I want to start this conversation. There's a lot I could say, but I will try and minimize it. I can talk a lot, so I'll try and make it as short as possible. So I don't know if you have the clip ready for us. Let me start by saying I'm a millennial pastor, and I think that's the one thing about me I love the most. I love introducing myself as a millennial pastor, because most of my generation are not in church. Dr. Andrews has talked about how youth left church. And let me share an interesting statistic. I did research because I wanted to know, okay, maybe sometimes you think something, and because you're surrounded by people who think the same way, you assume that that's the story everywhere. So I decided to do a research of the people I went to high school with. And sadly, only 16% still go to church out of all the people that I went to high school with. And that tells me that there's a big problem, because I hang out with Christians, so I'd assume that everybody around us is Christian. But if my age mates are not in church, which is the millennials, what happens to the next generation, which is Gen Z? The church has not figured out what to do with my generation already. So how much more are we struggling to figure out the next one? So let's watch this and then I'll say a few things. Sorry about the quality.
Nani atakuweka kwa ofisi, tuseme kwa mfano, sasa ni mwalimu ameingia. Sasa wewe ingia ukute huyu anafundisha mtoto wako. Utakubali? Honestly, utakubali?
Pastor,
nijibu kwa.
Siwezi kubali pastor.
This is my friend. Utakubali?
Pastor. Thank you.
Utakubali?
Hapana.
Yes. So mtoto wangu, you denied yourself an opportunity for employment. You know? You know that?
Yeah.
So I give you pesa to nyoa yourself.
Say yes.
No, you don't force him. There is something we have to discuss it. He must understand.
There are very many verses in the Bible here, Pastor, that we can talk about.
You say that because your parents are feeding you. The moment you will go angry, you will know that thing and go to the street and look for money.
Very true. I have not refused.
Got it.
But there are many very verses in the Bible, Pastor, that talk about self-decision.
Okay. Talk about what?
Self-decision.
Self-decision.
Yeah.
And can I talk to you as a father?
Uh-huh.
You will be a big fool to make decisions that make you jobless.
True. I have not lied.
Yes.
But you'll also be a big fool if you make decisions based on other people's opinions.
If you go angry, you will make wise decisions. But because he's feeding you and you dress up this way, because he has given you money, you talk that way. I wish you are my son. Aungepanda na mimi gari. Because you have matured, so you have your wisdom.
In short, you're saying I shouldn't bite the hand that feeds me.
You shouldn't do what?
I shouldn't bite the hand that feeds me.
No. Why should you bite the hand that feeds
me? That's what I'm saying. In short, you're saying that I should not bite the hand that feeds me.
Listen to me. You went to school. The teacher taught you. Can I gather all these people just to make them fool?
No.
If at all you did not have money, and you realize that this thing is wrong for student, if you want to be a teacher, utainyoa. But because there is another source somewhere, we can still argue. You know, when you argue with me, I don't lose anything. There is another person somewhere watching. Anasema Mungu nipe hiyo neema, huyo kijana anabishana nayo, aende akae na babake. I tell you the truth.
Okay, true. But I'm not.
I'm
I'm.
not forcing you.
Yes.
I don't force you.
Yeah.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
What did you go to school for?
To get an education.
After which?
According to the system, they say you have to go to school to get education so you can get a job. But I went to school to get an education, not to get a job.
So you don't want a job?
According to you, you're saying that
No,
if I
no,
don't
no.
have...
You, leave me alone. I'm working.
I don't want a job, I want to be busy.
You want to be busy?
Yes.
Doing what?
Anything. I don't want to be skylocking, I don't want to be idle. Vijana siku hizi wako idle. Na tuko idle juu watu wamekataa kutupea kazi. Na juu wamekataa kutupea kazi juu wanatuona tu tunataka pesa. Sasa umesema ukweli. I do not want to work for money. I want to work for free. And it's what I'm telling them. And that is why I have agreed with you. And that is why I'm telling you I'm not arguing with you. As an intellect, you should be able to know that I'm not supposed to agree with you. You see, this is intellectual speaking.
Yes.
I'm not supposed to agree with everything that you say because, you see, I have agreed with some things you've said because I am an intellect and you're an intellect. I've accepted that, you see.
Listen to me, my son. If you go to school to get education and not interested in working, you want to be busy. Listen to me. I give you a chance to talk. You become a busybody.
True.
And a busybody is a useless body.
Good. Very true.
You need to be productive and make life important in life.
That I know.
Just give me a chance. If you know you are not supposed to go to school, I wish you knew. You would have never gone to school.
I couldn't do anything about
Now
it.
listen to wisdom. You were born yesterday. I'm not making you or forcing you to listen to me. You choose to listen to me. You choose to do what I tell you. You have your father and your life. I wish you lived a certain life. We would have not argued. But remember, I can't stand here in front of these thousands of people to fool them. Whatever you spit is taken by somebody. I tell you the truth. We don't use intellects. We use spiritual intellect.
Spiritual
You
intellect.
use the academic ones. And you got it, and you are jobless, my son.
The clip continues a bit longer, but let's just stop there. I think you get the idea. So when I saw this clip trending, first of all, the audacity that this young man had, I think that's the one thing that stood out to me. But I decided to share it with some of my youth. And can you believe that most of them agreed that the guy is right? So it continues. When you watch the whole clip, the whole conversation started about his hair. The pastor was trying to explain that for him to get a job, he needs to cut his hair. Yet, he lives in a generation where people make money in their pajamas in their houses playing video games. So they're talking they're having two very different conversations. So the pastor is right, but the young man is also right. So he goes on to say how he's cut his hair before, he's gone to offices, he's given his CVs, he still hasn't gotten a job. So what does that say? Your logic is flawed. So you're trying to change me, yet I've tried doing it your way, and it didn't work. And this is the problem that we're having right now in the church. So let me start by saying, I grew up in church. My mother really did her best to take me to church. I served in church. Church was always my safe space. I remember as young as 13, I was teaching Sunday school. I really, really enjoyed being in church. But at some point when I was a young adult, I started having issues reconciling church and my reality. I was like, I know in my heart God is real. I've had such insane spiritual encounters. I don't doubt God is real. But I was struggling to reconcile the church that I see now and who God is. And so eventually I got to a place where I'm like, my mind is not being challenged at the level I expect. There are questions I'm asking, and I'm not getting answers to these questions. Not that there are no answers. It's because the kind of pastors that we had in youth ministry at that point were told, play cool music, speak the language they understand, and keep them in church. And so for some of us who, as the young man is saying, intellectuals, we're like, okay, this is all cool, this is interesting, but I've asked you a question and you've not given me an answer. So at some point, I felt like church is irrelevant, and I left church. Now, if you've been saved for a while, you know that that's a really bad idea. Christian outside of fellowship is a really bad idea. So, of course, I struggled a bit with my faith, made a few bad decisions, but it's in that season that I realized that there's such a serious gap, and the church is not able to speak a language that my generation understands. It's not that Christianity has become irrelevant, it's that we are not communicating it the right way. So by the time I was coming back to church, I'm like, you know what? I'm not sure about this whole pastor business, but someone has to do this. Someone has to explain the gospel in a language that makes sense to millennials. And so I came back to church and I was like, God, I don't feel qualified. Being a pastor was not on my to-do list, but because there's a need, this is what I want to do. And for sure, I don't know what else I'd be doing with my life. I love youth ministry. If I'm not doing youth ministry, I'm talking about it or I'm teaching other people to do it. So it's been amazing. So let's come back to this young man. Because I'm a millennial, the next generation is the Gen Zs, which is what this young gentleman is. I could see your faces as he's responding to the pastor. Some of you are just like, whose child is that? I could see your expression and I'm like, yeah, that's the kind of trigger that Gen Zs have. Let me give you a few words that have been used to describe this generation. The first one is obvious, and I think all of you will agree, arrogant. They think they know everything. And to be fair, they have access to so much information, they probably know a lot more than you give them credit for. The second thing is they're self-centered. So everything revolves around them. Self-care, self-love, self-awareness, everything kind of revolves around them. The third thing is they're stubborn. You will not get them to do anything. You're a bishop, that's great. They don't care. They're not moved by your title. They're not moved by how much you earn. They're not moved by who everybody thinks you are. They're just stubborn. They're extremely opinionated. So before you get them on board about anything, they have to be heard first. Which for most of us who grew up in a place where it's your parents tell you, do this because I said so, your mind just does not know what to do with this generation. Let me go through a few more quickly. They have no regard for authority. They don't respect wisdom. They don't respect systems, and they are clearly lacking in wisdom. Those are the obvious things that you see the first time you meet a Gen Z. But there are a couple of other things that I see, because these are my people and these are the people I'm ministering to. They are extremely passionate. Whatever these kids get, they will die for. There's a level of being sold out to something that they have that I don't think any other generation in the past has had. They are willing to die for something even if it's wrong, as long as they believe in it. They are extremely kind. You would not see it, but they have a very soft side. They care about justice, and everybody in this generation is an activist. During COVID times, we saw this whole Black Lives movement. They almost banned the whole of the US because, we feel like an injustice has happened. They're extremely pro-justice. They are hungry for God. That's the thing that we don't see. And if you hang out with them long enough, you'll realize that they're not rejecting God, they're rejecting church and religion. That's the problem that we have. They can't figure out why this is relevant, yet you've put so many boundaries, and there are a generation that comes with, I'm self-aware, this is who I am. So you come and tell them, before you attend church, you need to remove this and add this and change this. They're like, you know what? I don't think I need your God. I'll go online and find a guru that helps me connect spiritually and feel a certain way, and that's who I'll follow. And they will be committed to that. Even if it's a lie, they will be committed to it. So how do you minister to such a generation? I like what Dr. Kaka said, that we need to keep regenerating. Unfortunately, because of technology, we need to regenerate faster than we have ever done before. Before, a generation would be 30 years, 20 years, you can do the same thing, and it's fine, and it's working. Today, what was working 3 years ago is not going to cut it tomorrow. Some of these kids, they hang out at my house a lot. It's not that they care about boundaries. You'll tell them, I just had a baby, but they'll still show up. They have conversations, and half the time, I'm looking at my husband like, what does that word mean? And I thought I was young. I thought I'm a millennial. I should be, I should be cool still. But I have no clue what these kids are talking about. And so what Dr. Andrews is talking about is so relevant that we need to train them to minister to their generation. I have limitations already. So how much more for you guys who are a generation above me? And we still think that we're relevant. We still want to hold on to power, and we still want to be the ones making the decision. And they'll come and say, excuse me, even me, I know, I've read this. Some of you got cell phones when you're adults. These kids were born holding cell phones. It's so bad that at this point, you don't even need to do homework. You can approach an AI. I think most of you have heard of ChatGPT, and it does the homework for you. And then you tell them you need to work hard in school and get A's. You're not speaking the same language. Yet, we're still called to reach them. The gospel still has to reach them. So let me suggest 3 things that I see that we can do. The first thing is that you need to think through how you recruit youth pastors. It can't just be that guy who can play cool music, that guy who wears his hat backwards, that guy who's available because nobody else is available, that intern who's new to the church, we can't trust them in adults' church, so let's send them to youth ministry. That can't be it. You need to think through the recruitment process. It has to be somebody who understands the need to regenerate, understands the commitment to learning, somebody who's passionate, because the other thing that youth ministry is not easy. And many times it's the least rewarding, because you invest your time, you invest your energy, and then you have a conversation with these kids and you're like, we are making progress. And tomorrow you see their social media post and like, Jesus Christ, come back, I can't do this anymore. So it has to be somebody who's passionate about them, not just somebody who's there because, I'm waiting for a job opening in a better space, or I'm waiting for, the senior pastor to notice me so that I can move up. It has to be somebody who's passionate about this youth ministry. The second thing is this: we need to invest in training. We don't have a choice anymore. If it's going back to school, you need to go back to school. If it's constantly researching and reading, I think for me, that's one of the things I really enjoy. When Dr. Andrews is talking about the different ways of learning, I am a constant learner. I watch documentaries, I watch series for research, not just for fun. Because, I need to know what's happening. And I'd like to say I'm a student of the word and a student of culture. You need both. You can be very well equipped theologically, but you're not speaking it in a way that makes sense to anybody else. So you need to know what the word says and be properly rooted in it. And then have your eyes and ears on the ground in the culture to understand, okay, how does this relate to this? And one of my most favorite people in the Bible is Apostle Paul. And I get so fascinated at how he was able to just move to different places, study culture, and immediately speak into the spaces. I think sometimes when we read the Bible, we read it as these are the lessons. You don't put yourself in that situation and realize that was not an easy thing to do. How many of you can just, up and leave? You go to Zimbabwe today, you take another mission trip to South Sudan, the next day you've gone to Egypt, where you're able to look at the culture, quickly figure out how the Bible applies, and then teach it. And so that's the kind of training that youth workers need. And so this is me trying to advertise this class. You need to get your people in this class. It's important, it's amazing. There's some things that even I hadn't thought through, but just by being in this class, I'm like, wow, I think like this because I'm an African, not because it's the gospel. I understand the gospel as an African, but there are things they'd say and I'm like, I'm twitching right now. And then I'd go back to God and I'm like, am I offended by this or disturbed by this because it's not true, or is it because I have an African bias? And so education is important. You need to keep growing. You need to keep training. And then the last thing I'd say is youth ministry is a community ministry. Youth pastors can't be the only ones doing youth ministry. These kids will learn from us, and then they'll come and observe you, and they're like, yeah, you said this, but he's not doing that. And if there's one thing they're good at, it's calling us out on things. They don't have filters. They don't care about who you are, what you said, what you did, how qualified you are. They'll be like, yeah, this pastor, whatever it is you're teaching me, it doesn't align with what he said. So our lifestyles have to be the first ministry. And we need to be open. I apologize in advance, but youth these days don't have boundaries. You need to be open to, they can see your life and they can learn from it. Pastor Tim Wangi is one of, if you're in the Kenyan context, you know who Pastor T is. He has the most effective outreach ministries in high schools currently. But Pastor T speaks the language. And he said this, you don't reach this generation by showing them your successes. You connect to them by showing them your battle scars.
Come on.
They are not moved by you being put together. They want to know, is this a real person? Are they just, selling me something? Or can I connect and actually build on it? People who celebrate mental health issues, for sure, if you come put together, they're like, yeah, you're too good for us. We don't know what to do with you. And so they disconnect. So for me, if there's one thing I'll say is that, guys, the work is a lot. But we can't do it by ourselves. Youth ministry is a community ministry. All of us. It's all hands on deck. And I like what Dr. Kak said. In the next few years, if we've not invested, church is going to be very relevant. When I say 16% of the people I went to high school with are the only ones that still attend church, how much more for Gen Zs? They have alternate options. They have other places where they can find spirituality. They're out here quoting Buddha and all these things. And for you, you're seated and thinking, this is how we've done church in the past, and it's worked so far. We need to continue doing it. We can't afford to do that. So there's so much more I could say, but I think for me, that's it.